I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a series review. Last week, after seeing the third episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law, I said that both this series and the MCU as a whole had hit rock bottom, but perhaps that statement was a bit premature. While Jennifer twerking in her office with Megan Thee Stallion was definitely peak cringe, in terms of overall quality, She-Hulk Episode 4 is yet another steep decline, if that were even possible. The episode starts off with a second-rate magician called Donnie Blaze who fails to amuse his audience. After being coaxed by his boss to step up his game, Donnie decides to put on that overused magical ring that every child in the MCU seems to have these days to open a portal and make a ditzy drunk woman disappear. Meanwhile, Wong is in Nepal when the ditzy drunk woman drops in on him. Being the genius that he is, Wong immediately knows that she was sent there by Donnie Blaze, which makes him very annoyed. Next, Jennifer breaks the fourth wall and tells us that since Wong appears in this episode, people won't criticize how bad it is on Twitter. Yeah, sorry to break it to you, Jen, but that is not how Twitter works. Anyhow, Jennifer's father shows up unannounced with a shovel to help her beef up her home security in what feels like a scene that was written by an AI algorithm. Jen then tells him that she doesn't need his help because she's a Hulk now. She also says that she never told the police about the men who attacked her because as a former prosecutor, she knows that it's not possible to catch criminals. If Jennifer was an assistant district attorney in the past, wouldn't she have only prosecuted criminals caught by the police? And don't they have a sketch artist available too? Wouldn't it have been likely that one of the 4 street thugs that attacked her would have already been in their database due to prior arrests? Also, what if they try and attack her again, and this time they knock her out before she transforms into She-Hulk? With all these big questions looming, Jennifer goes to the office and immediately opens a Tinder profile. Suddenly, Wong shows up. Again. He wants to sue Donnie Blaze for using mystical magic without his approval. Apparently, Blaze was once a student of his for 1 week and then was kicked out of Kamar-Taj for misusing his powers, because according to this dumb show, Kamar-Taj is a joke now too. Jennifer agrees to help Wong, although she says it may be difficult because Donnie never signed a non-disclosure agreement. Jen and her cheerleader paralegal friend then go to a bar to write a cease and desist letter on behalf of Wong when a toxic male shows up and hits on them in the douchiest way possible, so they tell him to leave. Jennifer's cheerleader paralegal friend then says she doesn't like Jennifer's new Tinder profile, but that she should start using the app anyways because
hetero life is grim.
Then Jen and Wong go to personally deliver the cease and desist letter to Donnie Blaze, who makes it disappear, so they leave, but not before Donnie makes a pass at Jennifer. Jen then goes on her first Tinder date with a toxic guy that's a loser, a douchebag, and broke. Not only does he keep texting on his phone and looking at other women during their date, he then abruptly leaves, sticking Jennifer with the bill. The following day, in what has to be the quickest instance of judicial process ever, Wong's trial against Donnie Blaze begins in a super fancy courtroom, fitting for such an important dispute. Jennifer says that in addition to a lawsuit, they've also filed a preliminary injunction against Donnie Blaze so that he would stop using mystical magic immediately. Wong then transports the ditzy drunk woman into the courtroom to testify that Donnie Blaze is a bad person, but after Blaze makes a rabbit appear out of nowhere, the judge denies Jennifer's injunction and adjourns the court for 3 weeks. That night, after seeing that she has no matches on Tinder, Jennifer decides to change her profile picture to She-Hulk, and within a minute, she has a ton of suitors because I guess a lot of guys have a CGI Shrek fetish these days. The first guy she goes out on a date with is a muscle man douche. The second guy is a pompous indie movie director douche. The third guy is a geeky fanboy douche. Then, Jen breaks the fourth wall and asks if there's anything worse than dating in your 30s. Well, I would say watching this dumb show is probably a contender, yes. Anyhow, finally, Jennifer gets matched with Dr. Beta Male, who is smart, fit, and attentive, so she immediately wants to skip the meal and take him home. Meanwhile, Donnie Blaze opens another portal for a magic trick when a bunch of demons show up. Blaze then asks Wong to help him get rid of them. Wong then interrupts Jennifer, who is trying to get busy with Dr. Beta Male, and brings her to help him stop the demons. While successfully fighting off all the demons in a scene that looks like a PlayStation 2 video game, Jennifer complains that the timing of this crisis is super inconvenient because Dr. Beta Male is super hot. She also makes Donnie Blaze promise to never use mystical magic again. Dr. Beta Male, still at Jennifer's place, is now reading a book about feminism when Jennifer gets teleported back to her apartment. Now that she's completed her mission, Jennifer carries Dr. Beta Male to bed. The next morning, Dr. Beta Male wakes up and he's disappointed when Jen looks like Jen and not like She-Hulk, so he leaves. Jen then gets served with a lawsuit for trademark infringement because she's using the name She-Hulk. Apparently, Titania, who Jen stopped in episode 1 from killing a bunch of people, has been set free for some reason, and she's trademarked the name She-Hulk for herself. In a post-credits scene, Wong is seen hanging out with the ditzy drunk woman, who he now considers a friend. Quite honestly, I feel like I've lost some brain cells just having to describe the events of this episode. The writing on She-Hulk is once again some of the worst I've ever seen, and definitely another low point for the MCU. The idea of dating while having a double identity is not a bad one, and could present humorous scenarios, but it doesn't work at all on this show. All the attempts at humor here are just mean-spirited digs at men, which ultimately just fall flat. Also, while I'm sure you could meet some occasional weirdos while dating, most men would at least try and behave more nicely during their dates, even if they're just looking for a one-off encounter. Also, this show always keeps pointing out that women are objectified by men, but the second Dr. Beta Male shows up, Jennifer immediately views him as an object. And the double standard doesn't end there. In our day and age, if this show had a man landing on a woman and carrying her to bed this way, there would probably be a bunch of weirdos picketing outside Bob Chapek's office right now. But since this show is anti-male, it of course gets billed by the media as stunning and brave. The court case itself was mind-numbingly dumb and practically nonsensical at times from a legal perspective, even for a silly show like this. If it was at least funny, maybe the show could get away with it, but it isn't funny, so it can't. Instead, it just feels super cringy and practically unwatchable, and the MCU superhero stuff was just as bad. Until recently, Wong was supposed to be this serious mystical guy, but on this show, they've turned him into a complete buffoon. I also find it difficult to believe that after just 1 week of training, Donnie Blaze would have any of the skills that he has in this episode. It's another case where I feel like the show's writers have never even bothered learning about the franchise that they're writing for. Although I could continue to pick apart this episode for hours, I'll just give you the bottom line. She-Hulk Attorney at Law wants to be a female dating show, a legal comedy, and an MCU superhero show all at once, but the writers on this show just aren't good enough to pull this off. That's exactly what happens when you hire a bunch of bitter anti-male activists instead of seasoned professionals to write a show. Some people have asked me to continue reviewing future episodes of this show, and I will do that, but there's very little chance that this show will improve moving forward. If anything, Charlie Cox's much hyped upcoming appearance as Daredevil on this show is probably going to be an even bigger disaster than anything we've seen until this point. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments, and please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.